Welcome back to coverage of the Neon Dynasty Championship, everybody. We are into Historic. I'm Ailey Loney alongside Mani Davuti, and we could well put someone into the top 8, Mani.
Yeah, we absolutely can. This is really where my anticipation starts building, in these events. When we reach round 12 and there's an 11-0 player that could finish the clean sweep, oh, it is so exciting because if they don't, the next round we get another shot at it. But Jim Davis, I don't think anybody's stopping him so far.
Well, if anyone could, it may well be Zach Dunn. So he's rocking this Rakdos Arcanist list, which we haven't really seen all that much of this weekend. And I'm not too sure what the matchup is like against auras, but I know that this deck loves to disrupt and it loves to kill things, so Jim's gonna have to take care of his little bugly boys.
Yeah, kind of an awkward mulligan for Zach. The first hand had 2 copies of Arcanist, no removal spells. This hand has a discard spell and a removal spell, but no Arcanist. So certainly in the unfavorable position where it couldn't get the 2 to line up and really start that sort of train of making sure your opponent never gets to keep a creature on the board. But as is, seeing just the SRAM in hand is pretty good for Zach. If he takes the SRAM, what Jim may feel forced to do is just suit up the Savior with a Curious Obsession, and we know Zach has an Unholy Heat waiting in the wings, so things might actually line up pretty well for him, especially with a copy of Go Blank in hand.
Ooh, Jim's happy to see that. It's gonna do exactly what you mentioned, Curious Obsession on the good boy, with another good boy to protect it.
Yeah, and this is where Zach is going to get the bad news. Everything was working out exactly as drawn up until the second good boy comes up, and now the dogs are protected. So Zach's plan not looking great, and if he can't get the Selfless Savior off the board, one of the most powerful things against this Arcanist list is just the ability to draw cards. That's why this matchup could go either way, because Arcanist certainly has the draws to disrupt a lot of what Auras is doing, but if Auras starts snowballing, suddenly this Go Blank doesn't look particularly impressive.
I know, then you're not too sad, you just get rid of the extra cards in hand that aren't adding to your game plan right now. And there's also Spell Pierce, so if there are any shenanigans afoot, either good boy number 2 or the Spell Pierce can take care of that removal spell.
Now, Ailey, I don't read lips, but we saw Jim nod his head and say something. I'm pretty sure it was, that's a good draw, because that Spell Pierce, it's a pretty good draw here. When your opponent's trying to disrupt you using cards like Unholy Heat, having access to a Spell Pierce, if you want it now while we're in the turns where they're starved on mana, being able to save the second Selfless Savior is huge. So yeah, Jim, I agree. That is a good draw.
Love Zach's expression there. Just the eyebrows raised, is like, well, okay, sure. So
you can't blame Zach for feeling this way because he shakes his head a little there. He had perfect information. He led off a Thoughtseize on turn 1. He was like, man, this game plan is good. I take the SRAM, I have the removal spell, the dog dies, and everything is okay. But Jim's like, no, I'm going to draw a second dog off the top. I've got the Spell Pierce as well. What are you doing then?
Yep, he has certainly found the answers he needed to combat Zach Dunn's game plan. This Go Blank will clear out Jim's hand and get rid of the graveyard, so no fun for Luris when that eventually makes its way into the equation, but does have the Curious Obsession strapped onto this pupper, so there will be an extra card and a staggering insight too. Yeah, you love to see it, Jim. Come on, you're gonna get 2 cards off of this.
Yeah, he's a little worried right now. He's in a position where he's going to draw a card here. Would love it to be another protection spell because he's in a position now where if Zach has something like that Spikefield Hazard to deal with the 1/1 Selfless Savior and a removal spell for the other dog, it would essentially reset things to 0. But fortunately for Jim, Zach has just the Spikefield Hazard and nothing else, which means, okay, this Selfless Savior dies, but I've got 6 damage on the board.
Yep.
Making sure that it doesn't get exiled, because obviously your graveyard matters a lot in the Luris deck, and Jim needs 1 point of damage. The third SRAM, maybe not what he's looking for, but he's going to draw 2 more cards, and fortunately, Zach is sitting on just air, so it doesn't really matter that Jim whiffed there.
Yeah, things looking very, very good here for Jim Davis. He is rocking out. I want to know what he's listening to. It's got to be the music that's giving him his secret powers, I tell you.
I think he might be listening to We Are the Champions.
We are the
Because
champions.
he's on his way there. He is already up a game here and one game away from locking up his top 8 spot.
So, friends, we're going to take a very quick intermission here and chat about Historic a little bit as we have a bit of a delay on the back end just to try and make sure we keep up with our 10-minute delay to ensure competitive integrity. So, while we get caught up, or at least lengthen the gap between live and when you guys see it, Monty and I are going to chat a bit about Historic and what we've been impressed with this weekend. We've got the metagame here. Let's take a look-see. And, yeah, what have you been impressed by this weekend? What hasn't performed well?
I really like seeing the numbers that Azorius Control has put up in both its iterations, or all three of its iterations, I should say. We see Azorius Control as our second most played deck, but there's also Azorius Lotus Field and Azorius Yorion, both of which function similarly as control decks, so really control a big chunk of this metagame. And though typically control has a pretty rough Phoenix matchup, so you're not happy seeing Phoenix sitting there at the top of the metagame, you certainly would have liked to see a lot more Golgari food, it's still been putting up really good numbers, and you have to somewhat attribute that to the new cards that Neon Dynasty provided. Much of Otherworldly Light, Farewell, and most importantly perhaps the Wandering Emperor have just done so much work as at evening up some of the matchups for this deck that were previously unfavored.
Yeah, when we were looking at all of the metagame breakdown analyses and stuff from Frank Karsten before the tournament, like, white is very, very popular this weekend, and you've got to attribute a lot of that to Kamigawa. You know, Neon Dynasty bringing in all of those incredibly powerful white cards and bolstering game plans that otherwise wouldn't have been as successful. You know, all of those cards being able to exile, you know, especially things like Farewell, March of Otherworldly Light, that could have led to the decline in the popularity of food as well.
Absolutely, Control typically has a very good food matchup, which is perhaps why we see that decline in numbers. And it's not just the Control decks that are getting some love in the form of white cards. Jim may be a bit of a hipster not bringing the light pause, but I see Azorius Auras, I see Orzhov Auras. Most of the players playing either of those decks are bringing the light pause, so it's also the Aura strategies that got quite a bit of love in the form of a white card. So yes, Jim is crushing it, and it, you know, maybe more people will listen after this weekend and say light pause isn't the way to go in Azorius Auras, but we do see it so far represented in those archetypes.
Yeah, auras have been performing really, really well, so I'm happy to see it. I love drawing a bunch of cards, suiting up a bunch of little idiots, and just getting them as large as possible. So I was a big fan of the Runes deck in Alchemy, but yeah, that hasn't had the best weekend.
Yeah, definitely not. We have seen Enchantress type archetypes in Historic have some success in the past, but it's also a bit of splash damage. All of these exile effects that are able to hit multiple card types. I think one of the things that we've seen in the past where a strategy like Enchantress has succeeded is players would need to bring specific removal for it. You don't get that sort of splash damage. You would have to have some specific sideboard cards, but when you have March of Otherworldly Light in the control decks able to hit anything, well, suddenly it's so flexible that your deck takes that splash damage.
So I want to ask you now, these 4 rounds of Historic that we're going to see today, this is the last that we'll have over this weekend. A lot of players might be relying on their Historic rounds because they possibly bought the wrong Alchemy deck to it. Which decks do you think are going to struggle the most tomorrow once everything is settled and cleared and we've got our top 8?
Well, I gotta say, Runes, I think coming into the weekend, everybody was ready for it. A lot of people were thinking, is this just the best deck? Is there no beating it? Well, no, I think we've pretty adamantly answered that there is a lot of beating it, as Runes just did not put up a good performance. We do see a few players able to put up some success with it, or mediocre results and getting carried by their historic result. But overall, I would be really worried for any Runes player that is able to make the top 8, because as we've seen, you need to win one match in the top 8 to qualify for the World Championship. But if you go lose-lose, That's it. You're out. You do get some bonus points, but the World Championship invite is not there. So if you're a Runes player and you make it to Sunday, it is really daunting to get that one match win that you need in Alchemy.
It's like kind of playing in hard mode, right? Not picking up any gear as you start your Elden Ring adventure, sort of thing. That's kind of how I imagine it happening.
Yeah, just heading straight for the Tree Sentinel and then dying and dying. And anyways.
You understand our pain, those of us playing that game. So, aside from the runes deck, then, who do you think has the best shot of performing very well tomorrow?
I think these mid-range black red X decks have
Yeah.
really been impressive. Time and time again, we're seeing City Soccer Connoisseur and Fable of Kiki Chiki just put up the numbers, put up the results. And I think for the people that, yes, I was pretty impressed with Orzhov coming into the weekend, but those that were able to sort of one-up it and bring the Mardu or Grixis decks, if they make it to Sunday, which we do have a few players that are looking to head that way, I would be really keeping my eyes on them to maybe take down the whole thing.
It's going to be a really good slugfest tomorrow. I can't wait to get our top 8 decided and done. We've just got a couple more minutes to kill before we can jump back into Jim Davis versus Zach Dunn. So let's take another quick look here at our players. 2001 versus 2014. I guess we can call it 2014. It's weird saying the 20s. I'm used to seeing all the players starting in like 1990 something, but yeah, we got some 2000s players here, both looking for their first top finish, both rocking two very, very cool decks.
Yeah, I would definitely still consider Jim as part of the old school. Maybe not the oldest school, but he's been around the scene for a long time, gone through the different stages of competitive player and mostly a content creator now, but certainly still showing that he has what it takes to keep up with the best of them. And for Zach, certainly the new school. He is part of the group that I consider the future of competitive Magic, and having observed him in the scene for a while, it's inevitable that you're going to start seeing him put up performances like this over time.
Can't wait to see what the future holds for Zach Dunn. Can't wait to see what the future holds for this man, Jim Davis. Can he rack up 12 wins in a row? Does he get the rest of the afternoon off? Let's join the players in game number 2 here.
All right, one game away for Jim Davis. That's all it takes, but over on the other side, Zach Dunn has a real hand this time.
Yeah, there's the Arcanist. There's the namesake card of the deck, plus a very nice curve here into Kolaghan's Command, as well as Chandra, Torch of Defiance.
Yeah, and Jim is on the draw. You see him shaking his hand. If I had to guess, I would say the words are, I can't keep this, can I? It's really, if you keep a one creature hand like the Spirit Dancer, I say creatures as sort of a almost shortcut for Spirit Dancer or SRAM, or in this case, the Drake. If you keep one of these and you get turn 1 discard spelled and lose your engine creature, you see the nod of the head, it's pretty devastating. And with that Esper Sentinel, actually, and Jim having access to that Kolaghan's Command, I wouldn't be surprised if he just let the Spirit Dancer live. But one of the big things that he recognized, no one tapped White Source on turn 1 for Jim Davis.
Yeah, so if Zach Dunn had drawn a second disruption spell there, he would have been sitting pretty. But the draw's lining up decently here for Jim Davis as Magmatic Channeler makes its way onto the battlefield. So here comes Esper Sentinel, which I'm guessing will not be long for this world, depending on what's drawn here. I have the Eye Tyrant, not an untapped land. Dreadhorde Arcanist is available to Zach Dunn.
Zach might just go digging with Magmatic Channeler here, looking for a way to either play the Seasoned Pyromancer or cast this Kolaghan's Command. The Arcanist is tempting, and having the Hive as a guaranteed land drop is nice here, considering your opponent is pretty slow. I think one of the big things that Zach is happy about right now is seeing that island. This Azorius Auras deck isn't so much Azorius as it is extremely white heavy, splashing some blue. So when your opponent is showing you an island and a tapped Glacial Fortress, you know that their ability to play multiple spells is not quite there. Certainly with that Plains off the top, Jim finds some help, but Zach has already developed a board state, and the big thing is Jim doesn't have anything like that Curious Obsession, like a Spirit Dance or a SRAM, so he's very limited on card draw right now.
Speaking of mana problems, little bit of an issue here for Zach Dunn, as he hasn't found his second red source yet to deploy the Pyromancer or the Chandra Torch of Defiance. Does have Kolaghan's Command, but will unfortunately be giving Jim Davis a card off of the Esper Sentinel, as it's gotten a little bit more power.
Yeah, he does have an option available to him to attack with the Arcanist and use the Inquisition of Kozilek just to get a peek out of Jim's hand. Knows about that Karamesh's Blessing, so he can take that away from him for future turns. One of the nice things here is Kolaghan's Command is able to choose two modes. So one thing that Zach can choose is sorry, kill a creature and an artifact. So with that Esper Sentinel and that blocker there, he can target two things, which means the Selfless Savior will only be able to kill one.
He's going to kick things off here instead with a Magmatic Channeler and exile top 3 cards. Let's see what he finds. It's a Fatal Push. Very nice.
Fatal Push, just more removal spells, and specifically here, a 1 mana removal spell. Really huge because of that Dreadhold Arcanist being on the board, as well as the ability to pay the tax for the Esper Sentinel. The tax is 2, by the way, because of that cartouche on it.
Fatal Push is going to get got. Good boy jumps in the way of it, keeping Esper Sentinel alive. And making it indestructible too, so if the Dreadhorde Arcanist did want to attack there, it would surely die. And there's a SRAM Senior Edificer off the top for Jim, but no draw possible with the hand as it currently stands.
Yeah, SRAM is a decent draw. Jim is able to also put Lurrus in hand if he wants and still keep Karamesh's Blessing up. Blessing is great here because it can protect the Esper Sentinel through Kolaghan's Command if it's necessary. So pretty decent position for Jim right now. But again, having that Fatal Push in the graveyard is huge here for Zach because he'll be able to attack with the Arcanist, force the matter from Jim to use that Karamesh's Blessing, and then respond. In this exact position, dealing 2 to SRAM and destroying Esper Sentinel as an artifact would just be absolutely backbreaking.
There's land number 4 for Zach Dunn. He's going to be able to get his second red source for his powerful Planeswalker or the Seasoned Pyromancer. There's also, not that it matters right now, but Fabled Passage is a nice little way to activate Revolt on the Fatal Push.
Yeah, finding that second red source really nice for Zach here. Now has a lot of options available to him, but I think the biggest thing is I need to get rid of this SRAM before Jim is able to start chaining some auras together. So I think the question for Zach here is, what is the most consistent line for killing SRAM here? And starting with the Arcanist on the Fatal Push, knowing about that Karamesh's Blessing in hand is the biggest thing here. You target the Esper Sentinel and you force the Blessing from your opponent because again, you have Kolaghan's Command. Oh my god. That's a big draw, Ailey. That's a really big draw. That's a huge draw, Ailey.
Oh my goodness.
Oh.
You couldn't script this better if you tried. Spell Pierce off the top of the library, Kolaghan's Command, and look at him, he knows.
Zach is like, there's no way.
Oh.
There is no way. Yeah.
I feel you, Zach.
No way you just drew that. And Ailey, this is horrible because yes, you're not getting rid of the Esper Sentinel, but also it's blocking your Arcanist. You're losing that as well. This is just Zach Dunn being devastated by that Esper Sentinel trigger.
Oh my goodness. Esper Sentinel MVP and a Selfless Savior to protect against any further shenanigans. Could this be going any better for Jim Davis right now?
I really don't know if there's a way for it to be going better. And you know, it's all about that cartouche because you see Zach has 1 mana. He could have paid an Esper Sentinel tax for 1.
Yeah.
He couldn't pay it for 2. And that made all the difference in that spot.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my god.
Unbelievable stuff here. The top of the deck just being an absolute gem for Jim Davis right now, as he's going to get in here for 2. Magmatic Chandler is going to do its best to block the damage coming in, and lures to hand now. Things aren't looking super hot here for Zach.
Yeah, does still have a Chandra, but unfortunately that Selfless Savior makes it so he can't really use the minus ability to remove a creature. We may just see a Seasoned Pyromancer next turn depending on what Zach draws to go digging. But this is one of those situations where exactly Spell Pierce needed to come out from Jim Davis off that draw from Esper Sentinel. If it didn't, it could have just been GG in favor of Zach Dunn. But as things stand, now Jim is firmly ahead, I would say, considering he has Lurrus, he has the Sentinel, he has a SRAM, and most importantly, a Selfless Savior.
And very soon, a Lurrus to start looping it, as we've seen so many players do before. Alright, where does Zach go from here? Is it time to start digging to the top of the library, try and find something to keep him in this game? Otherwise, Jim is just going to keep pressing the advantage. Magmatic Chandler is going to exile 2 cards. Let's see what he's got.
This is one of the cool tricks from this deck. You do have the ability to go Seasoned Pyromancer when your hand is empty from Magmatic Chandler. Instead finds a Kroxa, that's great. It's an answer to Lurrus in hand. Really good. But Zach is now set up for next turn. All he needed was to fade an aura from Jim, and oh, that's a really good aura.
That is a very good aura.
Jim is snowballing this game, and
even more.
Zach is falling further and further behind. I really would like to know how the players sideboarded, because I'm curious if Zach brought in the copies of Hidetsugu Consumes All. Typically not a great card against this deck because so many of their important creatures cost 2. But on this specific board state, it would go a long way at trying to at least semi-stabilize you.
On the plus side, though, Zach Dunn does have an Escape Proxy. It dealt with Lurrus of the Dream Den, as Jim Davis only had the 1 card in hand. So, let's see how much of a wall this big old Titan can put up.
Yeah, it does have the ability to escape the Kroxa, and we do know that if Jim doesn't attack with a creature, Curious Obsession will fall off. So the 6/6 now being on the board means that Jim is going to get stalled for a bit unless he finds some auras off the top. Okay. All right.
It's a land.
All right. That's good. That's a break. That's the type of break Zach Dunn needed. And notably, he's still sitting on an empty hand except for a Seasoned Pyromancer. So if he gets through a turn from Jim, maybe just throwing away a 1/1 token here just to keep his Curious Obsession, that might be something that Jim is considering. If he can get through a turn where he doesn't take any damage and Jim doesn't draw any cards, being able to play Seasoned Pyromancer, draw 1 to 2 new cards would be really valuable for Zach, as that's the way back into this game now.
So this 1/1 is going to foolishly challenge this Elder Giant here. This Kroxa Titan of Death's Hunger is quite hungry and will very much like to gobble it up, I'm sure.
Yeah, just taking the time, making sure, what is this? Triple check the list. There isn't destroy target creature that blocked this turn randomly coming out from Jim Davis. Nothing like that. And then, yeah, you're just trying to keep Curious Obsession alive. And Fabled Passage, pretty great. You could just discard it to Magmatic Chandler, empty hand, play Seasoned Pyromancer, draw 2 new cards, and I think I saw a Fatal Push there as well.
Push, yeah. There is one of those.
Okay,
I'm not sure what the other one was. So, yeah, things are looking a little bit more even Stevens at this point.
Advantage is heading the other way, Lee. It's creeping back towards Zach Dunn. And, you know, Zach recovering from the sequence that happened earlier is so extremely impressive, because he's in a spot where he is playing for potentially his tournament life. He is 9-2 in this tournament, and that was just, for some players, that could just break you. Just mentally, you're just done after that draw of the Spell Pierce. But Zach is still in it. He's making great decisions, and it looks like he's very close, if not already there, to pulling the game back in his favor.
Ooh, those are some good draws.
Those were some pretty good draws.
Spikefield Hazard can take care of the Selfless Savior, if that's the line he chooses to go for here, and pay for some of the tax, but he's just gonna be patient, pass the turn back, and Heliod's Punishment! Oh, I hate Croxa!
Uh-oh.
Guess what?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh is correct.
Alright, back we go the other way.
Wait, okay. Now this opens up the attack here for the Esper Sentinel. He can swing in happily without any fear of dying to the Seasoned Pyromancer. Crox is gonna be grumpy as heck, no doubt.
Yeah, he's being punished for a while. He's in timeout. He's got 3 turns to take off before he's able to get back into this game. And Zach will likely be forced to chump block with this Seasoned Pyromancer. He needs to start fighting through this Selfless Savior. So we'll see the Spikefield Hazard likely aimed at the Savior, able to pay one of the taxes on the Esper Sentinel, but not both. Yeah. So Jim will still draw a card off of this, but at least Zach can untap and try to do something with that Chandra Torch of Defiance.
Yeah.
1 task done. 2 to go.
Jim gets a card. It's a Sentinel's Eyes, so more card draw coming his way if SRAM survives.
3 to go. That Croxa is taking a long time off.
Yeah, he's going to be hangry by the time he gets out of that.
Okay, with another Seasoned Pyromancer, I think this is the point where Zach just needs to give Jim some cards. Go Chandra, don't pay any taxes. Minus on the 3/3 Esper Sentinel. Hopefully it works. And then play another Seasoned Pyromancer and draw 2 new cards, because you're currently in desperation territory if you're Zach Dunn, I think.
Yeah. I think I like that plan. Get the Sentinel off the board. Get this 3/3 first strike out of here. SRAM is a problem, but not the biggest one right now.
That Helios Punishment was a huge draw. I cannot overstate it. And all right, 1 land, another punishment. Oh my god. Jim Davis only runs 2 copies of Helios Punishment daily. That's the 2, and pretty freaking good here.
Well, I mean, if yesterday was anything to go by, he just has to draw his entire deck and he'll see everything, right?
Yeah, he did not want to see that. 2 more cards drawn for Zach. Duress Flameblast Bolt, not bad. Isn't able to play it this turn. Ooh. And okay, Jim draws a Storm Chaser Drake. That can give him double duty against Storm Chaser Drake with Sentinel's Eyes on it is 2 more cards for the aura. So he can start a chain here. But this game could still go the other way, Ailey. It's not over yet, even though Jim is pretty heavily favored, I would say.
Not over by a long shot right now, as Heliod's Punishment is going to take care of the Seasoned Pyromancer. This kind of signals to me that SRAM and Esper Sentinel want to swing in here at Chandra Torch of Defiance.
Yeah, I would guess so. And Jim is still able to suit them up and draw some cards here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see just, let's make these a bit bigger. If he can make both of these 3 power, so they're able to just safely attack through this Magmatic Channeler, that would be excellent for Jim.
Yeah. Both attacking, though, will kill the Chandra Torch of Defiance, so there's a pesky Planeswalker off the battlefield at the very least.
All right.
Yeah, no real reason to block there. Chandra's going down whether he likes it or not.
It's going to die. Let's not risk it. Great decision from Zach. We're going to complete some tasks here in the meantime. Seasoned Pyromancer not even able to complete a task, as it is summoning sick this turn. So really being punished for an extra cycle, and now a Spirit Dancer. Jim has the trifecta here. No auras in hand at the moment, but if Zach leads off with this Duress and sees the Spirit Dancer, that's going to be pretty disappointing.
Will it, though? Because then at least he knows it's not a whole bunch of auras coming next.
Yeah, but have you seen how Jim has been drawing Ailey? Maybe he does know, you know?
Yeah. The draws have been very good indeed. Zach Dunn trying to get his way back into this matchup. He's currently down a game. Jim Davis is 1 game away from going 12-0, locking up his top 8 spot tomorrow, taking the rest of the afternoon off. He can go and hang out with his puppy dog. So cute. Little pup named Karn. If you haven't met him, you should totally go and do that.
All right. Zach really thinking about this. I believe it's a Thoughtseize and a land that was found there, and opting not to take the Thoughtseize. Instead, just going to start off with a Flame Blessed Bolt. And I would guess, has to pay the tax here, but by doing so, he wouldn't be able to activate that Seasoned Pyromancer in the graveyard. So a bit awkward, and now leading off with the duress, finds nothing but a Spirit Dancer. Will Jim draw an aura? Already has 6 power on the board.
Nope.
Oh.
Another land, unfortunately. But there is a 3-2 that can start chipping away 3-turn clock here for Zach Dunn, who needs to answer that pesky little pigeon.
Everything can attack here. Zach has no blockers, so
this is nothing.
6 damage coming on through and putting Zach on a answer this Drake or die clock. So yes, Jim has a lot of lands, but he doesn't need much, and the onus is now on Zach to find a way back into this game again.
Goodness me, Crocs is still not done. That card is dumb.
Arcanist not gonna do it, so I think Zach will have to go digging with this Magmatic Chandler because he needs an answer for this Drake. Otherwise, the game is over. He has blockers for the ground creatures in that Seasoned Pyromancer. So the most important priority right now, answer this Drake.
I think he's gonna YOLO for it. He's gonna block some stuff, he's gonna YOLO, and he's gonna be very disappointed to see the Selfless Savior.
Well, YOLO time is now.
Yeah. Alright, Zach, what can be done? I inadvertently made a pun there. That was not intentional.
That's it. Jim Davis, 12-0.
Yep, that's not gonna cut it. Zach Dunn is gonna concede, and Jim Davis, 12-0, undefeated into the top 8. Congratulations.